Why do they only notice you when you're tired? Why does your silence feel like rebellion and your exhaustion feel like love? Why is the version of you they admire the one who keeps abandoning herself? They never say it directly, of course. They say you're kind, thoughtful, reliable, strong. But beneath their gratitude is a quiet assumption that you'll be there, that you always have been, that your time, your attention, your energy are not yours, but shared property, borrowed freely and without question. And for decades you agreed to it, not because you were weak, but because you thought that was love. You gave, and gave, and gave, and now here you are, somewhere in the middle of your life, or maybe just past the middle, standing in a room full of people you've helped, supported, carried. But suddenly the weight of it all, every favor, every unspoken expectation, every invisible sacrifice, feels unbearable. And yet you're still smiling. That's the moment it begins. Truth 1, your peace is not selfish. Not the transformation itself, but the seed of awareness. The flicker of realization that something inside you has quietly died. That you've been running on habit. That your kindness has become currency. That your peace has become something you only get in scraps. You survived everything. You made it through the chaos, the mess, the raising of children, the building of careers, the holding of relationships that no longer held you. You reached the age when life was supposed to get easier, but instead, it just got quieter. And in the quiet, you started to hear the truth. You don't feel free. You feel used. And that truth, sharp and sacred, is not something to fear. It's the doorway. Because here's what no one told you when you were younger. You can spend your entire life being good and still lose yourself. You can be there for everyone and still go home to an empty heart. You can do everything right and still not feel alive. There's a man I know. Let's call him Walter. He's 67, widowed, former math teacher, quiet, gentle. Everyone in his neighborhood loves him. Why? Because he's always there. He watches his neighbor's dog, drives people to their doctor appointments, fixes broken porch lights, brings soup when someone's sick. No one asks twice. They just assume he'll say yes. And he does. Every time. He smiles, nods, says, "Of course." But when he goes home, he doesn't turn on the TV. He doesn't call a friend. He doesn't even play music. He just sits in the kitchen, lights off, back straight, eyes unfocused. He just sits, like a man whose soul got left behind somewhere, and he's still waiting for it to come back. I once asked him, "Walter, what do you actually want to do with your time?" He chuckled, not because it was funny, but because he genuinely didn't know how to answer. No one had asked him that in years. He hadn't asked himself either. That's what happens when your life becomes a reaction to other people's needs. You forget your own. Not in a dramatic, tragic way. Just slowly, silently, death by 1,000 small yes. And the world applauds you for it. You're called dependable, pillar, selfless. But in Buddhist teachings, there's nothing holy about self-erasure. In fact, it's the opposite of the path. The Buddha didn't smile through suffering to make others comfortable. He didn't teach us to dissolve into other people's expectations. He taught us to wake up, to become intimate with our inner life, to stop clinging to identities that are killing us. And one of the most dangerous identities to cling to is being the one who's always there, always giving, always available, because at some point you stop giving from love and start giving from habit, from fear, from the quiet panic that says, if I stop being useful, they'll leave. If I say no, I'll be alone. But you already are alone. You've been alone in rooms full of people. You've been alone while cooking for everyone else. You've been alone while listening to someone unload their pain for the 10th time without once asking about yours. So let's name it. Let's speak the sacred truth. Your peace is not selfish. Your solitude is not shameful. Your need for space, rest, boundaries, quiet is not a flaw to fix. It is a signal. A divine reminder that you are not a resource. You are a soul. The Buddha taught, you yourself, as much as anybody in the entire universe, deserve your love and affection. Not eventually, not when everyone else is settled, Not after the house is clean and the emails are answered. Now, you deserve your own attention, your own care, your own presence. But first, you must unlearn the lie that peace is something you have to earn. It isn't. Peace is your birthright, but you will not find it until you stop offering yourself to people who only call you when they need something. Let that sink in. Really sit with it, because this is not a call to become bitter. It is a call to become clear. You do not owe anyone your constant accessibility. You do not need to justify your rest. You do not need to explain why your time is finally yours. You only need to reclaim it, one breath at a time, one no at a time, one moment of silence where there used to be over-explaining. Let them misunderstand you. Let them wonder why you've changed. Let them say, "You've been distant lately," and you can simply nod, because you have been. You've been distant from yourself, and now you're coming home. So if you feel the quiet ache of overgiving, if you're done being a background character in your own life, then say it to yourself, out loud, even just in a whisper. My peace is not selfish. It is sacred, and I protect it now. That is not weakness. That is not cruelty. That is not spiritual abandonment. That is your first real act of awakening. And from here on, you don't apologize for it. Why do they only notice you when you're tired? Why does your silence feel like rebellion and your exhaustion feel like love? Why is the version of you they admire the one who keeps abandoning herself? They never say it directly, of course. They say you're kind, thoughtful, reliable, strong. But beneath their gratitude is a quiet assumption that you'll be there, that you always have been, that your time, your attention, your energy are not yours, but shared property, borrowed freely and without question. And for decades, you agreed to it, not because you were weak, but because you thought that was love. You gave, and gave, and gave, and now here you are, somewhere in the middle of your life, or maybe just past the middle, standing in a room full of people you've helped, supported, carried. But suddenly the weight of it all, every favor, every unspoken expectation, every invisible sacrifice, feels unbearable. And yet you're still smiling. That's the moment it begins. Not the transformation itself, but the seed of awareness. The flicker of realization that something inside you has quietly died. That you've been running on habit. That your kindness has become currency. That your peace has become something you only get in scraps. You survived everything. You made it through the chaos, the mess, the raising of children, the building of careers, the holding of relationships that no longer held you. You reached the age when life was supposed to get easier, but instead, it just got quieter. And in the quiet, you started to hear the truth. You don't feel free. You feel used. And that truth, sharp and sacred, is not something to fear. It's the doorway. Because here's what no one told you when you were younger. You can spend your entire life being good and still lose yourself. You can be there for everyone and still go home to an empty heart. You can do everything right and still not feel alive. There's a man I know. Let's call him Walter. He's 67, widowed, former math teacher, quiet, gentle. Everyone in his neighborhood loves him. Why? Because he's always there. He watches his neighbor's dog, drives people to their doctor appointments, fixes broken porch lights, brings soup when someone's sick. No one asks twice. They just assume he'll say yes. And he does. Every time. He smiles, nods, says, "Of course." But when he goes home, he doesn't turn on the TV. He doesn't call a friend. He doesn't even play music. He just sits in the kitchen, lights off, back straight, eyes unfocused. He just sits, like a man whose soul got left behind somewhere, and he's still waiting for it to come back. I once asked him, "Walter, what do you actually want to do with your time?" He chuckled, not because it was funny, but because he genuinely didn't know how to answer. No one had asked him that in years. He hadn't asked himself either. That's what happens when your life becomes a reaction to other people's needs. You forget your own. Not in a dramatic, tragic way. Just slowly, silently, death by 1,000 small yes. And the world applauds you for it. You're called dependable, pillar, selfless, But in Buddhist teachings, there's nothing holy about self-erasure. In fact, it's the opposite of the path. The Buddha didn't smile through suffering to make others comfortable. He didn't teach us to dissolve into other people's expectations. He taught us to wake up, to become intimate with our inner life, to stop clinging to identities that are killing us. And one of the most dangerous identities to cling to is being the one who's always there, always giving, always available, because at some point you stop giving from love and start giving from habit, from fear, from the quiet panic that says, if I stop being useful, they'll leave. If I say no, I'll be alone. But you already are alone. You've been alone in rooms full of people. You've been alone while cooking for everyone else. You've been alone while listening to someone unload their pain for the 10th time without once asking about yours. So let's name it. Let's speak the sacred truth. Your peace is not selfish. Your solitude is not shameful. Your need for space, rest, boundaries, quiet is not a flaw to fix. It is a signal. A divine reminder that you are not a resource. You are a soul. The Buddha taught, you, yourself, as much as anybody in the entire universe, deserve your love and affection. Not eventually. Not when everyone else is settled. Not after the house is clean and the emails are answered. Now, you deserve your own attention, your own care, your own presence. But first, you must unlearn the lie that peace is something you have to earn. It isn't. Peace is your birthright. But you will not find it until you stop offering yourself to people who only call you when they need something. Let that sink in. Really sit with it. Because this is not a call to become bitter. It is a call to become clear. You do not owe anyone your constant accessibility. You do not need to justify your rest. You do not need to explain why your time is finally yours. You only need to reclaim it. One breath at a time. One no at a time. One moment of silence where there used to be over-explaining. Let them misunderstand you. Let them wonder why you've changed. Let them say, you've been distant lately, and you can simply nod, because you have been. You've been distant from yourself, and now you're coming home. So if you feel the quiet ache of overgiving, if you're done being a background character in your own life, then say it to yourself, out loud, even just in a whisper. My peace is not selfish. It is sacred, and I protect it now. That is not weakness. That is not cruelty. That is not spiritual abandonment. That is your first real act of awakening. And from here on, you don't apologize for it. Truth 2. Saying yes to everyone is saying no to yourself. There's something you started doing a long time ago. You probably didn't even notice it when it began. It wasn't a decision. It was just natural. They asked and you said yes. They needed help and you showed up. They were upset and you made space. Not once, not twice, but again and again and again, until yes became your default. Until your phone ringing made your stomach tighten. Not because you were afraid, but because you already knew what was coming. Another request, another need, another small piece of you that would be handed over without question. And you would give it, because that's what you do. That's what you've always done. But here's the thing. Every time you said yes to them, you were saying no to yourself. No to your body that needed rest. No to your evening walk. No to that book you were finally starting to enjoy. No to your breath. No to your silence. It adds up. Not in dramatic ways. Not at first. Just slowly, quietly, invisibly. You start to feel irritated, but you push it down. You start to feel numb, but you smile anyway. You start to forget what you like because you're too busy being what they need. And no one notices because you've made it look effortless. They don't see the 100 small things you gave up to be available. They don't see how you sat in the car an extra 10 minutes to collect yourself before walking into yet another obligation. They don't see how you bite your tongue when someone calls you so generous, when what you really want to say is, no, I'm just tired, and I don't know how to stop. There's a woman named Joyce, 61 years old. She's the one in her family who holds everything together. She answers every group text. She remembers birthdays. She knows the food allergies of every grandchild. She reminds her husband to take his medication. She even keeps track of her sister's appointments because her sister gets overwhelmed easily. People admire her. They say she's the glue, but glue dries out. Last year, Joyce had a minor panic attack in the frozen food aisle. No warning, just chest tightness, blurry vision, heart racing, and no one to call. Not because people don't love her, but because no one was used to her needing anything. She sat in her car for 40 minutes, hands shaking, tears in her eyes, and whispered, "I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to be the one who always says yes." And that whisper, that was sacred. That was the voice of the self, finally breaking through the noise of expectation. The Buddha taught that suffering begins when we cling to things that are impermanent. But it's not always money or fame we cling to. Sometimes it's the illusion that we are only worthy when we are useful, that our place in the world is defined by how much we can endure, that our identity depends on being needed. But here's the spiritual truth. Being needed is not the same as being valued. Being available is not the same as being seen. And being agreeable is not the same as being whole. You are not here to be a never-ending source of comfort for everyone else. You are not a bottomless well. You are a living, breathing human being with needs, limits, and a nervous system that is begging you to stop. And yes, there will be guilt at first. That's the echo of your conditioning. You'll say no and feel a knot in your chest. You'll let the call go to voicemail and feel like a bad daughter. You'll skip a dinner and feel like you're disappointing someone. But here's the question you must start asking. When was the last time you disappointed yourself just to make sure no one else was? When was the last time you ignored your body's signals because someone might be hurt if you rested? When was the last time you canceled yourself for someone else's convenience? And how long do you think your soul can tolerate that? The truth is, your yes has become too cheap. You give it without cost, without pause, without boundaries. But something that's always available loses its meaning. Even love, even presence. So here's your invitation. Raise the price. Make your yes sacred again. Don't offer it unless you mean it. Don't say it out of guilt. Don't say it out of fear. Say it from alignment, from truth, from energy you actually have to give. In Buddhist practice, right speech is not just about words, it's about intention. Every yes you speak should come from clarity, not compulsion. Every no you whisper is a return to your own center. And yes, people might notice. They might say you're changing. They might say, "You used to be so generous," but they're wrong. You're not becoming less generous. You're becoming more intentional. You're not closing your heart. You're closing the door that was never supposed to be wide open all the time. Think of a temple. Does a temple let everyone in at all hours, no matter their energy, their purpose, their respect? No, there are times when the gates close, not to shut people out, but to protect what's sacred inside. You are that temple, and your peace is sacred, so protect it. Let this be the shift. The moment when you stop measuring your worth by how much you give. The moment when you realize that saying no is not rejection, it's protection. The moment when you finally understand every yes to them that drains you is a no to the deeper version of you that's trying to rise. That version of you, she's been patient, she's been quiet, but she's not going to wait forever. So say it, even if your voice shakes. I don't say yes anymore just to keep the peace, because I've learned keeping their peace should never come at the cost of losing my own. Truth 3, burnout is not a badge of love. There is a point in your life when tired becomes more than tired. It becomes a way of being, a kind of permanent fog that you carry with you into every room, every conversation, every breath. You don't remember when it started, because it didn't happen all at once. It happened in the small things, saying yes when you meant no, picking up the call when you needed silence, showing up when your body asked for stillness. You didn't mean to burn out. You just kept caring. You just kept being the strong one. You just kept giving past your edge. And eventually that edge disappeared. Now you're just running on what's left. But here's the worst part. You learned to wear that exhaustion like a badge. You started confusing burnout with proof that you love enough, that you're spiritual enough, that you're useful, that you're good. People say, "You're so strong." And you nod with a tired smile, but deep down something aches, because you know that strength wasn't chosen. It was forced. It was demanded. It was expected. And you delivered it at the cost of your health, your breath, your joy. Let's say it clearly. Burnout is not love. Exhaustion is not devotion. Being overwhelmed is not proof of your goodness. There's an old woman named Maria I once sat beside at a Buddhist retreat. She was in her 70s. Quiet, gentle eyes, the kind that look like they've seen the ocean from both sides. She told me she'd been a caregiver her entire adult life. First to her mother, then to her husband, then to her grandkids, then to her brother with Parkinson's. And somewhere in between, she tried to care for herself, but only in the leftover hours. When the house was quiet, when no one needed her, when it was too late. At the retreat, she slept through the first 3 meditation sessions. And when someone gently pointed it out, she just smiled and said, "I've been keeping people alive for 40 years. This might be the first week I'm keeping myself alive." And there it was, the truth, raw, unfiltered. She wasn't lazy. She was coming back to herself. Slowly, breath by breath, nap by nap, moment by moment. But she shouldn't have had to wait that long. You shouldn't have to wait that long. We live in a culture that romanticizes overwork, that celebrates the ones who never stop, that quietly rewards women who hold everything together without ever falling apart. And then we wonder why so many people collapse in private, why their smiles don't reach their eyes, why their bodies begin to scream through illness what their mouths were never allowed to say. "I can't keep doing this. I need rest. I'm not okay." The Buddha didn't teach martyrdom. He didn't preach endless giving without balance. He walked the middle way, the path between extremes, between indulgence and deprivation, between hyper-responsibility and complete detachment. He taught that you cannot offer clarity from a clouded mind. You cannot offer peace when your own heart is at war. You cannot pour from an empty cup, and yet so many of us try. Why? Because somewhere along the way we learned that if we stop, we'll be seen as selfish, irresponsible, weak. So we keep going, until the body intervenes, until the mind goes numb, until life forces us to stop in the most unkind way, through collapse, through breakdown, through a quiet, creeping depression that feels like being underwater while everyone else breathes fine. But you don't have to wait for that. You don't have to crash to justify your pause. You don't need permission from exhaustion to claim your peace. You are allowed to rest now. You are allowed to reclaim your time before your body takes it back for you. And yes, it will be uncomfortable, because at first, rest feels unnatural to someone who's only ever known motion. Silence feels awkward to someone who's only ever listened outward. Doing nothing feels like guilt to someone who's been conditioned to equate stillness with laziness. But sit with it. Let the discomfort pass through. Let it shake your bones if it has to, because underneath all that discomfort is your real self, the one that was never meant to live in burnout, the one who remembers joy without agenda, stillness without shame, presence without performing. There's a phrase in Buddhist psychology, dukkha. It's often translated as suffering, but it also means a wheel that doesn't turn smoothly. Burnout is dukkha. It's the wheel of your life grinding because it's off track. Because the engine of your being is still trying to run on proving, on pleasing, on surviving. You don't need to fix the wheel. You need to stop and listen to it. And then you need to recenter. That means asking yourself questions no one taught you to ask. When I say yes, am I betraying myself? When I rest, do I feel guilty or free? Do I know how to be still without explanation? Burnout isn't just about overworking. It's about forgetting that your life belongs to you, that you are not a tool, not a machine, not an emotional caretaker for the entire world. You are a soul with breath and boundaries. You are allowed to be full before giving. You are allowed to close the door not out of cruelty, but because you've realized that peace has a cost, and you're finally willing to pay it. You may lose people when you stop burning out for them. Let them go. You may disappoint people when you stop saying yes to everything. Let them be disappointed. You may feel lost when you no longer define yourself by your usefulness. Let yourself be lost, because in that loss, you find the truth. You find the version of you that doesn't need to earn love through exhaustion. You find the version of you that remembers the sound of her own breath. You find the version of you that can sit in silence and feel whole. So here's your moment. Say it, write it, live it. I don't burn out to prove my love anymore, because I finally know my love doesn't require my suffering. This is not the end of your giving. It's the beginning of giving from a place that's real. And that place begins with you. Truth 4. Boundaries are not walls. They are gates. People think boundaries are rejection. That saying no means turning your back. That stepping away means shutting others out. And if you've been conditioned to equate love with availability, then even the smallest boundary feels like betrayal. Like you're suddenly cold, distant, harsh, especially after 50, when you've spent most of your life keeping things together. Being the bridge, the buffer, the one who smooths over the awkward silence, who replies even when exhausted, who picks up the call just in case someone needs something. You've been the open door, the safe place, the one everyone comes to. But now, you're starting to feel it. In your body, in your breath, in your patience that wears thinner with each unspoken demand. And the question starts to form, quietly at first, then louder. What if I don't answer this time? What if I close the door just for today? That's when the guilt arrives. Not because you've done something wrong, but because your nervous system has been trained to fear solitude, to associate stillness with shame, to associate separation with punishment. But solitude isn't punishment. Stillness isn't shame. And boundaries are not walls. They are gates. The difference is everything. A wall says, no one gets in. A gate says, only what's aligned is allowed through. A wall is fear. A gate is clarity. A wall is built to keep the world out. A gate is built to protect what's sacred within. And you, dear one, have something sacred within you. Something you've forgotten how to guard. Something that's been trampled by too many demands. Too many emergencies that weren't yours to fix. Too many relationships where you were the emotional caretaker but never the one truly cared for. Let's tell the truth. You weren't just nice. You were boundaryless. And people loved you for it. Until you started closing the gate. Until you started saying things like, I need time, I'll get back to you. Or simply nothing at all. Until you stopped justifying your no. Until you stopped explaining your quiet. And that shift scared people. Because your openness was never neutral, it was a convenience. And when convenience disappears, so do the ones who depended on it. You didn't lose them. You just stopped giving them access they never earned. There's a woman named Lenora, 72, soft eyes, sharp mind. She used to be everyone's emergency contact. Not officially, but spiritually. She was the one people came to when they were confused, anxious, in chaos. And she always opened the gate. Always said, I'm here. Until one year she stopped. No explanation. No dramatic speech. Just stopped picking up every call. She returned texts when she had energy. She skipped events that felt heavy. She spent long mornings on her porch in silence. And people noticed. Some called it selfish. Some asked if she was depressed. One friend even said, You're not like you used to be. And she smiled, because that was the point. In Buddhism, the teachings on Chan Neem, right mindfulness, include clarity about what you allow into your space, into your mind, into your heart. It's not just about awareness. It's about discernment. You do not consume every thought. You do not attend every conversation. You do not absorb every emotion. You choose what passes through, just like a temple gate. Have you ever been to a temple when the gate was closed? It doesn't feel like rejection. It feels like reverence. Like what's inside is so precious, it must be protected. Why should your energy be any different? You are the temple now. Your presence is sacred. Your time is finite. Your body is your only home. And your boundaries are not a wall to keep people out. They are the gate that reminds you. Not everything is meant to enter. It's okay if some people don't understand. It's okay if they say, You've changed. It's okay if they take your silence personally. Let them. Let them learn the new version of you. Let them sit outside the gate and reflect. Let them knock and wait, because when you stop answering immediately, you teach people something valuable. That your time is not disposable. That your energy is not automatic. That your attention must be met with presence, not demand. This is not cruelty. This is clarity. This is spiritual adulthood. This is the second half of life, when your role is no longer to carry everyone, but to walk upright and undefended toward peace. And yes, boundaries can feel lonely at first, especially if you've never had them, especially if you've always been the one to keep the door open, even when you were freezing inside. But loneliness isn't always a punishment. Sometimes it's a purification, a moment to be with yourself, to hear the voice that's been drowned out by everyone else's volume, to realize that solitude isn't empty. It's full of your own presence, and you were never meant to be a stranger to that. Breathe into that. Feel the weight of it. Let it sit in your chest like truth returning home. You are not here to manage everyone's emotions. You are not here to be soft at your own expense. You are not here to give access to people who treat your peace like a doormat. You are the gatekeeper now. You decide who comes in. You decide when the gate opens. You decide how much of yourself is offered. Not because you are hard, but because you are healing. Not because you are distant, but because you are discerning. Not because you've stopped loving others, but because you've finally started loving yourself. And that's the shift. So say it. In your heart, in your journal, in your actions. I am not a wall. I am a gate. And my peace is no longer open for negotiation. This is how the second half of life begins. Not with more doing, but with sacred choosing. Truth 5. When you stop explaining, you start returning. You used to explain everything. Why you couldn't make it to the dinner. Why you needed time alone. Why you were tired. Why you finally said no. Why your silence was not hostility, but survival. You didn't even realize you were doing it at first. It started as kindness, as clarity, as an attempt to avoid misunderstanding. But over time, explaining became your shield. The way you softened the blow of your truth. The way you made your boundaries seem less threatening. The way you tried to stay likable even while crumbling. And now, you're exhausted, not just from giving, but from defending why you don't want to give anymore. You don't need a longer nap. You need to stop justifying your existence. There's a moment, often after 50, when your spirit simply refuses to explain anymore. Not out of bitterness, but because it's finally learned your energy is not a debate. Your boundary is not a group decision. Your peace is not a story you owe anyone. There's a man named Elijah, 65, once a pastor, a mentor, a community elder. Everyone loved him because he listened, because he cared, because he made space for everyone's pain. But when his wife passed, something shifted. He became quieter, not withdrawn, just less accessible. He stopped responding to every call. He let texts go unread. He skipped gatherings he used to host. People asked if he was okay. Some said he was changing. He didn't argue. He didn't explain. He just smiled in that way someone smiles when they've made peace with being misunderstood. Because he finally understood this. The most powerful transformation is the one that doesn't ask for applause or permission. He wasn't becoming distant. He was becoming whole. In Buddhism, there's a teaching on noble silence. Not just silence of the mouth, but silence of the need to be seen, approved, or explained. This silence is not cold. It's not passive. It's presence, distilled. It's choosing not to waste energy proving your worth to people committed to misunderstanding you. When you stop explaining, something sacred happens. Your energy returns to you. The hours you used to spend crafting careful responses now become time for breath. The emotional labor you poured into managing perceptions now becomes space for stillness. And in that space, you meet yourself again. At first, the silence feels strange. You wonder if you're being rude. You feel the urge to soften every no with paragraphs. You draft texts that begin with, "I'm sorry, but," and then you catch yourself. You remember, you're not sorry for protecting your peace. You're not sorry for stepping back. You're not sorry for resting when you're tired. You're not sorry for not being who they expect anymore. That's not apology. That's awakening. Every time you explain your boundary to someone who never honors it, you reinforce the belief that your clarity needs external approval. But it doesn't. Your soul is not on trial. Your peace does not require consensus. The moment you realize that something shifts, the energy that used to leak out in long explanations, it stays, and you feel it, as steadiness, as presence, as a kind of power that's not loud but immovable. You begin to walk differently, not with arrogance but with anchoring, not to impress but to return. Return to what? To yourself, to the version of you that doesn't shrink to make others feel comfortable, to the rhythm that doesn't rush, to the breath that doesn't owe anyone a performance. There's a kind of quiet that only arrives when you stop trying to be understood. It's not loneliness, it's liberation. Because once you stop explaining, you begin to experience. You taste your tea instead of texting through it. You sit on the porch without updating anyone. You leave the party early, not because you're rude, but because your body whispered, "It's time to go." And this time you listened. You finally listened to yourself, and ignore the noise that once drowned you. Let others wonder. Let them say you've changed. Let them ask why you're quieter now. Let them feel the distance. You don't need to fill the silence with answers. Sometimes silence is the answer. And those who truly see you, they won't demand explanation. They'll feel the integrity in your quiet, the steadiness in your gaze, the boundary in your presence. They'll understand that your return to yourself was not a rejection of them, but a reunion with the part of you that was tired of disappearing. In the second half of life, you stop performing. You stop translating your truth into a language that makes others feel safe. You stop auditioning for belonging, because you've realized the only place you were ever supposed to belong was here, inside this breath, inside this body, inside this moment of being fully, completely, unapologetically yourself. So the next time someone asks for more of you than you have to give, don't explain, don't justify, just smile gently and say nothing. Let your silence speak the boundary. Let your stillness speak the return. Let your peace speak for itself. Say it now. Say it without hesitation. I no longer explain the way I protect my peace, because I'm not asking. I'm remembering. And just like that, you're home. Truth 6, peace is not given. It is protected. You keep waiting for peace to arrive. You think one day the noise will fade. The demands will ease. The phone will stop ringing. The world will finally leave you alone long enough for your breath to come back. You think peace is something that happens when things quiet down. But they won't. Not for long. Because the world doesn't know how to rest. And if you keep waiting for it to calm down, you'll spend the rest of your life in a holding pattern. Hoping, wishing, postponing your stillness for a future that never comes. Here's what no one told you. Peace isn't something you receive. It's something you protect. It's not a moment. It's a boundary, not a mood, a discipline. And if you don't choose it, fiercely, intentionally, unapologetically, it will not stay. It will be taken, chipped away, one favor at a time, one phone call at a time, one sure I can help at a time. There's a man named Alan, 74, former engineer, 3 grown children, 6 grandkids. Everyone calls him Pops. He lives alone now, keeps a garden, eats dinner by candlelight, not because he's lonely, but because he's decided that solitude is a ceremony. He used to say yes to everything, babysitting, driving across town, fixing things that weren't urgent. He thought that being always available made him a good father, a good friend, a good man. But one afternoon, while helping his son install a ceiling fan, his body locked up, his breath caught. He had to sit down, not from illness, but from a kind of soul-deep depletion that words can't describe. That day he realized he wasn't tired from activity. He was tired from being everyone's anchor while forgetting to dock his own boat. He changed that day. He didn't announce it. He just started guarding his mornings like a monk. He stopped answering the phone before 10 a.m. He turned down invitations with a gentle, "Not this time." He made space in his life for no one, just space. And in that space, he found something. Not excitement, not stimulation, but a kind of holy silence. The kind that doesn't ask for anything. The kind that feels like coming home. The Buddha never taught us to chase peace. He never said it would come through more effort, more doing, more fixing. He taught us to sit, to see, to breathe, and most of all, to let go of the things that disturb the mind, not because they're bad, but because we cannot hold everything and still be free. You cannot be constantly available and fully alive. You cannot say yes to everyone and stay centered. You cannot hold everyone's emotions and still feel your own heartbeat. Peace is not soft. It's not passive. It's not a gentle breeze you wait for. It's a fire you guard with your life. You have to choose it over and over again. You have to say no when it's easier to say yes. You have to leave when staying would make others more comfortable. You have to build a life where your nervous system can unclench, even if it makes you seem less helpful. Because helpful doesn't equal whole. Because admired doesn't mean aligned. Because liked doesn't mean at peace. Let that settle. Let that truth burn away the part of you that still thinks you have to be who they remember in order to be loved. You don't. You are not here to perform. You are not here to be everyone's support system. You are not here to be the strong one until the day you collapse. You are here to know your breath, to taste your time, to walk through this life as someone who remembers that your soul is not public property. That's what protecting your peace looks like. It's not dramatic. It's not harsh. It's simply this: I choose not to abandon myself, even if it means disappointing you. Say it with me, not as a mantra, but as a vow. I do not wait for peace to find me. I create it. I protect it. I live inside it. Because if you don't guard your peace, they'll take it without meaning to. Not because they're bad, but because you didn't close the gate. Because you didn't say no. Because you kept being available when what you truly needed was to disappear for a while and return only when you'd fully return to yourself. So let them misunderstand. Let them call you selfish. Let them wonder what happened to the version of you who always showed up. She's gone, and in her place is someone stronger, someone quieter, someone untouchable, not because she built walls, but because she finally built a life that feels like hers. Let this be the moment, the shift, the threshold. You've chased peace long enough. Now you stand still. Now you guard it. Now you become it. Truth 7. This isn't isolation. This is sovereignty. They think you're disappearing, but really you're just returning to the version of you that doesn't answer out of guilt, that doesn't explain out of fear, that doesn't stay out of obligation, to the part of you that doesn't negotiate with exhaustion anymore. And yes, from the outside, it might look like isolation. You go to fewer gatherings. You let your phone rest longer. You don't show up like you used to, not because you're bitter, but because you're done being on call for a world that never learned how to give back. They don't understand that this isn't distance. It's design. This isn't loneliness. It's sovereignty. Because what you're doing now is not withdrawing. It's choosing what comes in, what stays out, what earns your attention, what deserves your presence. You've lived half a life performing. Now you want to live the second half possessing it. You no longer walk into rooms just to keep the peace. You bring peace, and if the room rejects it, you leave. You no longer fill every silence with softening words. Sometimes you let the silence speak for you. You no longer feel the need to convince anyone that you're still kind. If they need a tired version of you to love you, let them go. In the first half of life, you were trained to believe that your value was tied to how much of yourself you gave away. But now you know, your value has nothing to do with sacrifice, and everything to do with sovereignty. There's a woman I met once, Eleanor, 73. She used to be everywhere, her church, her community, her family's every event. She was the organizer, the helper, the emotional buffer. She was proud of that role until her health began to crack. At first it was fatigue. Then her voice trembled during conversations. Then she started forgetting names. Her body was speaking, but no one listened, not even her. Until one night, lying awake at 2 a.m., she whispered into the darkness, I'm disappearing inside everyone else's life. I don't want to die like this. That was the line, the red thread, the pivot. She didn't announce it. She just began living differently. She spent mornings in silence. She unsubscribed from every message that demanded her urgency. She said no without elaboration. She stopped being accessible. And in that stillness, she met a part of herself she hadn't known in 40 years. You see, isolation is when the world forgets you, but sovereignty is when you remember yourself. And yes, it will feel radical at first, especially when the world has been taught that a good woman, a good parent, a good person never says no. That love means overextending. That availability equals worth. But look around. That conditioning didn't make us happy. It made us sick. It made us resentful. It made us lie awake at night wishing for one day where no one needed anything from us. Now you don't wish. Now you decide. Because this stage of your life is not a decline. It's a coronation. Not an ending, but a reclamation. You are no longer here to be consumed. You are here to consecrate your energy, to move with intention, to speak only when your words are clean, to enter only the spaces that hold your peace, to walk away from everything that confuses your clarity. In Buddhism, there's a practice of returning to the breath, not to escape, but to come back, again and again, to this body, this moment, this self. That's what you're doing now. Every time you close a door gently but firmly, every time you don't explain your no, every time you rest without guilt, you are practicing energetic sovereignty. You are no longer reacting. You are choosing. You are no longer afraid of being misunderstood. You are committed to being undiluted. Say it with me, not as a whisper, but as a declaration. This is not isolation. This is the return of my soul to its rightful place. This is sovereignty. And from now on, that's the only place you move from. You've spent a lifetime trying to be good. Good daughter, good parent, good partner, good friend. You've shown up. You've held space. You've kept peace in rooms that never offered you any. But now is different. Now is yours. You've crossed the line. Not the one they told you not to cross, but the one you drew the moment you realized your energy is not for sale. You no longer answer out of fear. You no longer explain out of guilt. You no longer stay where your spirit quietly dies just to avoid being called difficult. From this moment forward, your life is not a reaction. It's a return to stillness, to clarity, to your breath, to your own 2 feet planted in sacred ground no one else can name but you. This isn't about building walls. This isn't about being cold. This is about building the inner temple, where your time, your presence, your softness, your rage, all belong to you first. So let them wonder. Let them say you've changed. Let them knock on the doors you used to always open. You've changed because you finally remembered who you were before the world told you what to be. You've changed because peace is no longer something you search for. It's something you protect like sacred fire. You've changed because you are no longer willing to betray yourself just to be praised. And if you've made it this far, if something inside you said yes, not softly, but with a kind of aching exhale, then say it now in the comments as a vow to the self that waited for you. I protect my peace. I choose my energy. I no longer apologize for coming home. And if this spoke to the part of you you forgot, subscribe, not to follow, but to rise.